From inside a radio booth at M&T Bank Stadium, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Saturday night in December to break down the Ravens' playoff clinching win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about what it took to get the Ravens over the hump and to get a win over their division rival. We'll talk about the pick six, the Marlon Humphrey play that changed this game. All that and much, much more. But first, the Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with a superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more.
Don't miss the
Toyota,
2025 CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament in Baltimore, February 25th to March 1st at CFG Bank Arena. Watch HBCU teams battle to be crowned champion. Check out the free fan fest and performances at the Baltimore Convention Center. Enjoy downtown's top restaurants and stay in one of our amazing hotels. The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament. You want to be here.
All right, Jonas. Word of the day today is birth. And there are two different spellings because there are two different words here.
We've got ourselves a homophone.
They are homophone indeed. Pronounced the same way, but two different words. Birth as in IRTH, because Marlon Humphrey got to celebrate the birth of his child with a game-changing pick six in a matchup against the Steelers. And also birth, BRETH, because the Ravens clinched a playoff berth with their 10th win of the season against the Steelers. Jonas, exhale. After the tension, the nerves coming into this game, the fact that the Steelers had the Ravens number so frequently in the last several years. The Ravens had not beaten this team in 2 years. They got the monkey off their back by beating the Steelers 34-17. And it feels like a breath of fresh air.
I think it's you kind of talked yourself into maybe what might happen in a rematch if we did get a third game, but I don't think we will, because either the Ravens get a top 4 seed, which they are now the slight favorites to, according to the New York Times. I think they're over 60% according to that model. Obviously, depends on winning these next 2 games, and certainly the Steelers dropping at least one of those of their next 2. But I was kind of looking forward to a more representative game from the Steelers. They didn't have George Pickens, didn't have a bunch of guys on defense, but the Ravens, for so long have had, I think, a talent advantage against the Steelers, and have not made it happen on the field because of weird stuff happening, because of them losing fumbles, because of them, getting flagged, because of Mike Tomlin and that Steelers special teams coming through at key opportune spots. So I think it was, notable today that the Ravens made some of their own luck. They picked up fumbles, they created fumbles. They weren't a total disaster on special teams, and they did what they had to kind of pick at some of the Steelers' weak spots on defense. Did they have a great game on defense themselves? Not really, but I think that they probably are now setting themselves up to play. If they win if they win the division, either the Broncos or the Chargers, both of whom they've already beaten, or if they don't win the division, it seems like they're probably going to be penciled into that 5-4 game and going against the Houston Texans team that we will see on Wednesday, but lost Tank Dell for probably the rest of the season with, it sounds like, a dislocated kneecap. They lost Jalen Petrie to an injury, I think season ending, lost Jimmy Ward, I believe, today, another starter in that secondary. So I think even though this wasn't the Ravens' best game, they dominated on the scoreline. They helped Lamar with his case for MVP, I think, a little bit. And they probably put themselves out of what I think might be maybe more of a toss-up against the Steelers than I think today might have suggested, if they indeed would have gotten, and they still might get, that third game.
Right.
I mean, there were points in this game where I felt like the Steelers were kind of going blow for blow with the Ravens. And I definitely didn't expect that based, the first 3 quarters, based on everything that had gone wrong for Pittsburgh in those first half hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the preview podcast. The Ravens are the more talented team. I mean, you look at the offense alone, and the Ravens have the better quarterback. They have the better running back room. Justice Hill went out in this game. We'll talk about his unfortunate injury, but between Derrick Henry and Justice Hill, they have the better running back core. They have the better wide receivers, even when George Pickens is on the field. They have the better tight ends. The offensive line is maybe the only area that is a toss-up, but you could give the edge to either team in that instance. The Ravens should be the dominant team in this matchup, and it does not make sense that for whatever reason, this team has had so much success in the regular season the last several years and just not against Mike Tomlin's Steelers. And so for them to finally show that they are the better team, they are the more talented team, they got in a rough, close, tight game in the fourth quarter. It was a one-score game entering the fourth quarter, and they still came out on top, was just such a relief. You talk about the playoffs and what could come. The Ravens, needed to win this game in order to stay alive in the division, because they lose this game, the division's wrapped up. With the win, they still need help to win the division. They can win out and the Steelers lose at least one of their last two games, or the Ravens lose to the Texans on Christmas, but beat the Browns in week 18, and the Steelers lose to the Bengals. So there are two scenarios, according to Gianna Hahn on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. She's got you up to date there. So there are two scenarios in which the Ravens still win the division.
Two straightforward scenarios.
Straightforward.
The tiebreaker stuff gets a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, we better not be coming down to a coin toss, Jonas. But we've gone long enough without discussing the pick six in this game, because that was such a momentum changer. The Ravens were up one score when Marlon Humphrey picks that pass off, and the interception that Lamar Jackson throws in the red zone was so uncharacteristic. In the fourth quarter, his fifth pick of the year, but really his first bad interception of the season. After Derrick Henry rips off a 44-yard run, the Ravens are poised to go up by 2 scores. He throws an interception on a route where it looked like Rashad Bateman stopped, but Lamar was expecting him to keep going. Lamar throws it directly into the arms of the defender, and you could just feel the tension at M&T Bank Stadium, and everybody collectively groan and think, this is how it's going to happen again. This is how the Ravens are going to lose again.
Yeah, it was Minkah Fitzpatrick's first interception since 2022. And so with that, and with how Russell Wilson had been doing and how the run game had been working, and just the clenched sphincter play we kind of expect from this Ravens offense against the Steelers in the fourth quarter. I mean, doing the preview for this game, the Ravens basically during this 8 of 9 stretch where they've lost all those games, they had won the first 3 quarters by aggregate, but they've been doubled up in the fourth quarter, and that was the problem. And so for the Ravens to use that fourth quarter to start it with the interception on a drive that we thought was going to end up with at least 3 points because of how Derrick Henry had been rolling, putting that offense in a great spot.
They're in the red zone. I'm pretty sure that interception was on first down as well.
Yeah, and Lamar very rarely makes mistakes in the red zone, and for the Ravens to turn right around and force Russell Wilson, who for all of his limitations is a extremely turnover averse quarterback. I think he was like first in the league and fewest turnover and lowest turnover worthy play rate. Force that pick, get unlikely contributions from David Ojabo, get likely contributions from Marlon Humphrey, who's probably wrapped up an all-pro season if we're talking about it.
He's having at least Pro Bowl. He's having an incredible year.
Yeah, and for him to stroll in there and I think basically put that game away. I mean, I to come back from 2 touchdowns at that point with this Steelers attack, with everything that they've gone through, it felt pretty unlikely. So you just tip your cap to the defense, which I did not think had a especially great game, but my God, did they come through at key points, not just with Marlon Humphrey's pick, but also the Ardarius Washington punch out near the goal line. And, you had Kyle Hamilton also breaking up, ranging over on that, 4th and 5 that Russell Wilson turned into a moonball opportunity, ranges over, knocks it down, doesn't draw a flag. And that, that's 21 points right there in the Ravens' favor, basically.
Those are the kind of plays that in this rivalry just feel like almost every single one has gone the Steelers' way. These 50-50 plays.
And not just that, like all the fumbles that ended up in the Ravens' hands.
Yeah.
You had the Lamar Jackson strip sack that the Ravens recover on that first drive, right? You had the Desmond King fumble, the first of 2 Desmond King fumbles.
Yeah.
Tylan Wallace get back in there.
You're back to returning punts.
Back to punt returning. That the Ravens return, or that the Ravens recover, and that sets up, I believe, the touchdown drive, the short field touchdown drive.
Yeah.
And then obviously not just punching out that ball from Russell Wilson near the goal line, but having enough bodies attacking the problem that you're able to recover that, even though Russell Wilson was probably closest to that ball when he lost. He was certainly the first one to know that he had lost control of that ball. So these are just the type of things that have been Steelers hallmarks, not just over the Mike Tomlin era, but certainly against these Ravens teams in these games.
Yeah.
And the Ravens took the Steelers' job and did it for them, basically.
Yeah, I mean, turnovers are such a fluky thing because a lot of it comes down to luck. I mean, it is quite frankly luck that the Ravens were able to recover those two fumbles on their own, but they make up for a lot of deficiencies on defense. I mean, that is a 7-point swing, the Ardarius Washington forced fumble on Russell Wilson, because he was at the 4 or 3 yard line and he forces that fumble. There was nothing but green grass in front of him and he changes that. That's another 7-point swing. If Kyle Hamilton commits a pass interference on that play, or if that pass is completed on the 4th down, they probably score a touchdown on that drive because it sets up 1st and goal at the 1 yard line. Right. So they are fluky. So it feels tough to blame a team when they have a negative turnover differential, but the Steelers are near the top of the league in forced fumble. They were tied for first coming into this game in forced fumbles. They were near the top of the league. They are at the top of the league, I believe, or near the top of the league in interceptions. At least they're higher than the Ravens. The Ravens, the Steelers have 16 interceptions, which is 4 fewer than the Vikings, which lead the league, and that's 3rd in the NFL. The Ravens defense this year, not only partly because they struggled so mightily just to do the basic things for the first 10 weeks of the season, but they have not gotten picks and they have not forced fumbles. They did that today, and it made up for the fact that wasn't necessarily their most sound defensive game. So creating turnovers just covers up a lot of areas that you may be deficient at. And defensively, I mean, those were the 3 big plays in this game. The Marlon Humphrey pick six, the Ardarius Washington forced fumble, and the Kyle Hamilton pass breakup. Yeah,
they coming into today had lost 10 fumbles in 9 games against the Steelers. Over a turnover game via fumble is just incredible. And I think I misrepresented that fact in a tweet earlier. I said the Ravens had lost an additional 2 fumbles when obviously they lost it, but they recovered it as well.
Right.
But for the Ravens to come up with those and to keep the train on the tracks and not give this crowd reason to just fear the worst, I think was really important. I mean, the Ravens never trailed in this game. There were obviously some points where you felt a little bit uneasy about how it would come. You felt there were other points where they were up 10 points, late in the first half, and you started to think, all right, maybe this is where the Ravens finally start to exercise the advantage that they have in talent and injury luck and everything. And that didn't happen. But these games are 60 minutes for a reason, and you play enough snaps with enough good coaching, enough good execution, then I think you'd usually get the better team. And today, I think that was pretty clearly the Ravens.
And I think it was also important for John Harbaugh, because we were talking after that game. A lot of the talk coming into this game was about Lamar Jackson and his inability to beat the Steelers, but there was the huge caveat that he had never played at home against the Steelers in front of a home crowd. The only time he'd played against the Steelers at M&T Bank Stadium was a COVID game. So he not only gets that important win at home against the Steelers, but for John Harbaugh, let's be honest, he made some mistakes in previous matchups and in that Week 11 loss to the Steelers. And it just felt like, I mean, after that game, Ben Roethlisberger said that whatever Mike Tomlin was doing, he was cooking in John Harbaugh's kitchen. And the one decision that felt like this is the decision that John Harbaugh makes in this matchup, and it goes against him, which is the 4th and 5, where the Steelers went for it. They could have punted it away. And if they get that feels like the universe is against the Ravens. They're never going to win this matchup. But the fact that they didn't get it felt like it then tinged that move with desperation, which I don't think it was. I think it's fair to go for it in that instance. They were in Ravens territory. Analytics probably would have said go for it. But the fact that they heave a deep ball instead of also just trying to complete a 5-10 yard pass, at that point it sniffed of desperation, and it was nice to see the shoe on the other foot for once.
Yeah, the Ravens did what they had to.
How about the lack of penalties, Jonas?
What
the other thing.
They finished without a single
10
defensive
fewer
penalty,
penalties.
right?
I think so. 10 fewer penalties than the last time these two teams met. They committed 12 penalties the first time these two teams met. They commit 2 for 10 yards. Cleaner football.
I know, and I think this was the most defensive pass interference prone, or second most defensive pass interference prone referee crew in the NFL. And I don't think there was a single DPI today, was there?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of. Justin Tucker made all his kicks. It was like they exercised all their demons in one game. It was really nice.
Yeah, and now they have to go out and do it again on Wednesday.
Yeah. I think from a defensive perspective, we've seen this defense play much, much better over the second half of the season. The turnaround really started in week 11 in that win, or in that loss to Pittsburgh, when the Steelers did not score a touchdown. It felt like they started to build their confidence from there. You tweeted also out at the start of the game, their first defensive possession of the game, when the Steelers got the ball for the first time, that Marlon Humphrey was on a knee, like breaking down the huddle.
Yeah.
It seemed like he has been a vocal leader, several points over the course of his time with the Ravens. I don't want to make this seem like this is a new thing, but he seemed especially vocal today. After that, I think combined sack from Kyle Van Noy and Justin Madubuike on a key third down, Nnamdi Madubuike on a key third down. They were celebrating, and Marlon Humphrey was right next to them, celebrating with them. It just felt like he was a much bigger presence in this game. It wasn't just the pick six. It felt like he had his fingerprints all over the game. And this defense, you can tell, they know what they're doing now. Like, they feel so much more confident in where they are, what their assignments are. They're not allowing huge busts. I know this offense didn't have George Pickens, and Russell Wilson is a shade of his former self. But, I mean, for the most part, other than a few plays here and there, I know you weren't crazy about the way that they played, but they got the job done. They kept people in front of them, and they just looked like a much better unit right now than they did 8-9 weeks ago.
Yeah, they got 3 sacks. They got about 6 quarterback hits. So pretty good for a team running as much play action as they did. I guess with Marlon, it's interesting that we're talking about him now, because I think he definitely has a bit of an unconventional leadership style. I mean, when you think back the last time the Ravens were playing the Steelers, he had a good game, but he was also the subject of some discourse, because earlier that week he had Deshaun Elliott on his podcast, and that led to some inadvertent batching of Marcus Williams, which, for being honest here, was a little bit deserved. I think Deshaun Elliott could probably help the Ravens more than Marcus Williams could at this point in the season, but you don't want that kind of negative aura around your team.
Yeah.
Coming into a game of that magnitude. Marlon does not do a whole lot of media. He did talk to us on, what was it, Tuesday, said all the right things about just how it feels like the Steelers just know how to do it. They know how to have the Ravens number.
Yeah.
And I think it was important to be upfront about that, and to kind of face your fears and acknowledge what has gone wrong, so that you can put yourself in a position to fix that.
Yeah, because nobody else had. I mean, John Harbaugh, Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson avoided that. They did not want to make it seem like the Steelers owned any of their headspace.
Yeah, and Marlon still said some not entirely credible things afterwards, like how, well, first of all, I think he probably hasn't been sleeping a whole lot, because he told us he couldn't really remember what day his son was born. Congrats to Marlon and his wife for the birth of Duke.
I don't know what day it is, to be fair, because why are they playing on a Saturday before they play on a Wednesday during holiday week?
But I think probably the most interesting talking point from this game, do we actually think that he was trying to pitch the ball to David Ojabo?
Yeah,
as he was teasing / taunting whoever the hell the Steeler was who was closest to him as he ran that thing in.
I think if you look at the replay on slow-mo, at first he turns back. So obviously, if you watch the replay, which I'm sure you've done a million times, he catches the interception, realizes he has nothing but green grass in front of him, and reaches the ball back. And it does at first look like
he did have an alibi, because Ojabo told us independently of Marlon that Marlon had told him after the game that he was trying to lateral the ball to him.
And good for David Ojabo, who did not play in the first matchup between these two teams.
Matchups. This is the first career game against the Steelers.
He was inactive in week 11, correct? A guy who, has gone through some serious ups and downs, mostly downs in his Baltimore career. Good for him that the pressure in Russell Wilson's face, in part, forced that interception. So a nice moment for him. But can you imagine if Marlon Humphrey had actually lateraled the ball back when there were other players, like Steelers players, who could have caught that? Like, if he tries to lateral that to David Ojabo, a defensive lineman, there's just 100% chance he's going to fumble that.
Yeah,
That would have been an objectively very very low football IQ play.
I think John Harbaugh would have benched him for Wednesday's game.
It would have been
He would have been
so-
well within his right too.
So uncharacteristically not right.
We should also shout out Kyle Van Noy as I look up the up to date sack totals.
10.5.
He is now over double-digit sacks for the first time in his career, and he is not far off from the league lead. The league leader is Trey Henderson with 12.5, and there's Kyle Van Noy, I guess tied for 7th maybe with Will Anderson, depending on what he did today. Just looking at ESPN's rankings, which haven't updated right now, but talk about a turn back the clock type of effort from Kyle. I mean, it's kind of a inconsistent season in terms of booms and busts and valleys and peaks, but again, I think he has come up big in some really important games here in Baltimore. He was great against the Bills when they blew out Buffalo, and he was great against the Steelers when the Ravens needed someone on that defense to kind of carry this to pick up the slack in that first half.
Yeah. On the offensive side, we've gone way too long without talking about Derrick Henry. I mean, you dug up the stat of yards after contact. It felt like he was constantly breaking tackles. He was constantly ripping off big runs. Finishes this game with 24 carries for 162 yards, averages 6.8 yards per carry. The story on Derrick Henry throughout his career has been he is better as the game goes along, and he is better as the season goes along. As the winter gets colder, shortest day of the year today, winter solstice, he gets better. And weirdly enough, coming into this game, he reaches a season high in yards per carry in October, and November and December per carry were starting to tick down. So it was kind of the opposite. He had not had an effective he did not have a dominant game. It felt like in a little bit of time, and that's because dominant. We raised the bar because it's Derrick Henry, having an outstanding season overall. But it felt like he had not made as much an impact on a game in a while. He made a huge, huge impact on this game. And in the fourth quarter, when they're up 2 scores, he was the finisher for them.
Yeah. From Next Gen Stats, the most explosive runs by a player in a game this season. I don't know what their definition is, but True Media, it's about 12 yards. So that gives you a sense for just how many of those chunk runs that he was ripping off. Also interesting to note from the same Next Gen Stats tweet, when we think about how Derrick Henry has thrived this year, the big plays have come on those crack tosses where you get him in space.
Mm-hmm.
You make use of Tyler Linderbaum's mobility, Stanley's mobility, Roger Rosengarten's mobility. He ran the ball between the tackles on a season high 62.5% of his carries, where we had 5 of his 7 explosive runs. I think some of that was probably an adjustment from Ravens because they didn't have Nelson Aguilar, who's been their most reliable blocker on those reduced split sets where he takes care of the edge rusher or the outside linebacker or whatever. But I think it's an important development for this Ravens rushing attack in general that you're able to run the ball up the gut against a Steelers team that, yes, was missing Larry Ogunjobi, but still Cam Hayward, Nick Herbig, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, to be able to not shy away from just chugging that thing up the A gap, up the B gap, and embracing physicality in the game that you absolutely have to. I think it's just a really important sign, a really important indicator of this running game's health, which I was a little bit worried about just on a down basis. You didn't really see the kind of production that we did in September and October. So I don't know if this was matchup dependent. I don't know how much credit goes to Lamar for making the right read on read options or just checking the Ravens out of bad passing plays and the good running plays. But it's a great sign that this Ravens rushing attack was able to not just succeed, but succeed in the no frills, no nonsense way that it did today.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that the Ravens were playing from ahead more in this game than they were in Week 11. But in that Week 11 game, Derrick Henry finished with, I think, 13 carries for 65 yards in that game. They consistently in that game also shot themselves in the foot by pushing themselves back. They had to play from behind a lot of that game, so you have to pass more naturally. But I didn't think that they ran the ball enough. I don't think that they gave Derrick Henry enough opportunities in that game because we've said it time and time again. It's only a matter of time. You keep feeding the beast, he's going to break one free. And it felt like there was, aside from one drive in the first half where I felt like they could have given him the ball more. It was a punt on 5 plays. They managed just 12 yards when it was a 7-7 game. I felt like they made a more committed effort to giving the ball to Derrick Henry. And part of it was also the fact that he had to be out there more because Justice Hill goes down. Justice Hill caught just 2 passes for 30 yards and looked like he was going to have a big impact on this game before he goes down with a scary looking injury and left this game with a concussion. Um, After the game, obviously, it doesn't sound like, if another game is 4 days away. It sounds like it's probably unlikely that Justice Hill is going to play in 4 days. We saw Rasheen Ali out there, although he didn't do much. But Derrick Henry was asked to do more in this game, and he showed why you give this guy $12 million because he is $16 million because he's capable of doing this.
Yeah, and I believe I think Gianna covered this in our live blog, but with him going over 1,500 yards, that's another $500,000 in his already overflowing pockets. So,
Must be nice.
not just making it rain with the base salary, but with the performance incentives as well. So,
I think if we hit 40 minutes on this podcast, you also get a $500,000 bonus.
I think the only incentive left for him to hit is winning the Super Bowl.
There we go. I mean, he played an outstanding game. Lamar wasn't perfect against this defense, which is to be expected. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL. The pass rush is awesome. I thought, especially in the first half, Lamar looked like he was a little bit wary of the pass rush. He was just kind of running out of clean pockets at times. He settled down shortly after that. Also, credit to Todd Monken on the play design for the first touchdown to Isaiah Likely, because you mentioned a lot of Derrick Henry's success has come on those pitch plays. And it looked like that was a fake pitch to Derrick Henry right. It froze the defender, and Isaiah Likely just sneaks out behind him, and it's an easy pitch and catch for the touchdown. Creative play design there.
I mean, we're grading Lamar on a curve for Pittsburgh because, and this is from Alex Kozora, who does a great job covering the Steelers for Steelers Depot. His QB rating in his previous starts against Pittsburgh, 54.9, 65.2, 65.8, 66.1, 80.1. Today, 115.4, which I think is over his season-long average, and his season-long average is like the second or third best all time.
Sure.
So, didn't overdo it with the passing yards, and that interception to Minka is definitely was leaving him a little bit salty in that press conference because he's, I think rightfully scarred by how these games have gone. Where like he said, I didn't know if that was going to be the one that was the difference. That was if that pick was going to be the turning point in this game because.
It sure felt like it.
It sure felt like it could have been. But he did what he had to. I think he had, close to 0.2 EPA per play, which is really, really good. And it's a good warm up going from the Giants and their completely depleted defense to the Steelers and their somewhat depleted defense to the Texans, who have a moderately depleted defense, but still so much talent up front. I mean, going from Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, Hayward to Neil Hunter and Will Anderson is a very, very rough stretch. And I think the Ravens did a good job today. I mean, we were talking about it before we went on air. Lamar got blitzed almost 69% of the time in this game. And the Ravens, gave up some pressures. I think it was about 40%. But if you're getting blitzed that much, you're going to find some opportunities downfield. And that was Zay Flowers. That was Mark Andrews, that was Isaiah Likely, and I feel like they had some answers, or a lot more answers than they usually do against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Zay Flowers also with a couple of big catches late in this game. How many times have we said this year he comes out to a great start, and then it seems like after halftime he and Lamar aren't able to find each other as frequently. He finishes this game 5 catches for an even 100 yards. Mark Andrews 4 catches. He had a touchdown in the back of the end zone. Isaiah Likely had another touchdown. Rashad Bateman had a nice kind of toe drag touchdown in the corner after he came into this game being questionable with a foot injury. Also, Lamar Jackson setting the franchise record that he had previously set for most touchdown passes in a season with 37, and also setting his personal career record in a season for passing yards, going over 3,700 something. So, a game in which he finishes 15 for 23 for 207 yards, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick, and only took 1 sack. Like, that is going to look like one of the worst stat lines of his on the season, which is ridiculous to say because we're just used to him doing what he did last week against the Giants, putting up 5 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, he is playing at an MVP caliber level. I think in a lot of ways, he's having a better season than he did last year, which is ridiculous to say because he won the MVP last year. So, and should have been unanimous. He also finished with 9 carries for 22 yards in this one. Just a solid game from Lamar, despite the fact that he threw that late pick.
Yeah, I think it's probably time to give up the dreams of a 4,000, 1,000 yard season. Just he had, I think, 22
Which
rushing
no one
yards
has
today.
ever done.
Yeah, but he is now at 3,787 yards for the season. So, barring a just total shutdown by both the Texans and the Browns in that Week 18 game, he's going to get 4,000, which I don't think he's ever done in his career.
And the Ravens are definitely, I mean, not definitely, but most likely both of those games are going to matter. So he's probably going to start both Week 17 and Week 18 because there's not a scenario where the Ravens wrap up the AFC North next week because they still need to win both those games and have the Steelers lose at least one of those games. We don't have game times for Week 18 though yet, so that is just
Could be a Saturday.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be a Wednesday in the NFL this year. So a lot still to be decided over the final couple weeks of the season, but wow, what a game, Jonas! That was everything we asked for and more. We came into this game expecting fireworks, and then we got some.
Yeah, and now it's I'm out of predictions for how Wednesday's game will go because these guys are putting their bodies through hell right now. It's 3 games, the third game in 11 days. That's a lot to ask on of these guys. I mean, obviously they will do 3 games in 12 days when it's a Sunday, Thursday turnaround, but they have already played 15 games this season, so it's not a typical midweek turnaround. I think you give a lot of credit to the Ravens for the key guys on this team being able to kind of put in the long shifts that they have. It's not just Derrick Henry running over people, but it's the guys on the offensive line who, Daniel Failele came into the game today with a knee injury. I think he had a pretty solid game just from the kind of 30,000-foot view that I was taking. The run defense wasn't good, but you had guys stepping up in key spots, and then you just have everyone in the secondary. I think Trey White left the game. I'm not sure if he returned with whatever upper body injury he was dealing with, but it's a credit to the Ravens and their culture and the coaching staff and the strength training staff that they are as healthy as they have been this late in the season. I mean, I think I saw a stat from Sports Info Solutions that in terms of total points lost to injuries, which is basically measured by whatever proprietary system they have for attributing points saved or points won for offensive and defensive players, the Ravens were number 1 in the NFL and the fewest points lost due to injury. And it's not surprising because you look around and if the worst thing that's afflicting this team is a Nelson Aguilar concussion, then you're in pretty good shape.
Right. And you just ran through all the other teams in the AFC that are more banged up. It's and we're us definitely talking about this. It's definitely going to be a jinx. Somebody's going to go down.
Every game I come into it thinking oh, this is definitely a game where the Ravens came from hell arrives and never does.
Right. And I mean, flashback a year and a half, and all the conversation was, can Lamar Jackson just get through a 17-game season? And knock on wood, the fact that we're not talking about it and haven't had to talk about it, we haven't even had a catch your breath moment. Everybody hold your breath and let's hope that he's okay kind of moment is a credit to him. And it's honestly, he's making us look foolish for questioning his weight loss in the offseason because
very guilty of that.
He's been able to hold up pretty well. He lowered his shoulder, I thought, on some big hits today. I mean, he plays with fire, he plays with emotion every game, but you could tell that he also very much wanted this game. After Derek, they go for on 3rd and 1, they're in their own territory in the second half. They give it to Derrick Henry, he gets stuffed, and Lamar's walking off the field very animated, frustrated by either the play call or the fact that they went no huddle in that instance. They come back and score a couple more touchdowns, and it doesn't matter in the end. But he wanted it as much as they say that this is not a game, a rivalry that they pay much attention to, and the Steelers didn't have any spot in their head. The Ravens wanted this game. They knew how important this game was for standings, and they knew how important this game was for public perception. And to come out with this win here was so key for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stat that you don't really think about too much, or maybe it's not as obvious as you would think, but because of Lamar's late season injury history, because also of how many regular season finales, I guess only 2, that he's been able to sit out because they've already clinched things. He hasn't lost as a starter in week 15 or later in the regular season. Now, obviously, you would like that to carry over to the postseason at some point, but he and the Ravens have been nails in these, mid to late December / early January games. And
Yeah.
obviously, you bring up a stat and it's bound to get broken or jinxed at some point. But Lamar has won MVPs plural because of how he closed the season. And, even though today wasn't necessarily as transcendently great as, Josh Allen versus the Lions was last week, if Lamar goes, gangbusters against the Texans on Wednesday, on Christmas Day, on Netflix, against a really, really good Houston defense that people probably will not discredit as much, as much as they probably should because of all the injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
Then we're probably talking about a dead heat between Lamar and Josh Allen.
And this is also the first matchup between these two teams that did not end in a one-score game since 2019. We have just seen so many nail biters for the last several years between the Ravens and Steelers.
Average margin of victory for the Steelers in this series over that 8 wins and 9 game stretch, I think, was 4 points.
And they broke 20 points. The Ravens did. Because
in the third quarter.
In the third quarter. That was the key stat.
Miracle of miracles.
Also, miracle of miracles, Justin Tucker making all his kicks. Hasn't missed a kick since
Craven the Hunter was released.
Which he did outstanding promos for. I think the quality of his promos were better than the quality of the movie itself.
Yeah, that is apparently a box office buzz, but Justin Tucker is a special teams boom.
15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What about Letterboxd?
That's a great question. So, 85% disapproval rating. Maybe if Justin Tucker makes more field goals and kicks by the end of the year, he can get his percentage up 5% by the end of the year, do you think?
Sorry, I'm just reading the top reviews on Letterboxd.
More accurate kicker. The Hunter movie is disliked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means
it's a 2.0 out of 5 on Letterboxd. The top review is from Tim Tam Titus, and it's I love the part when he, which I guess is James Austin Johnson.
Justin Tucker.
No.
Justin Tucker. You're telling me Justin Tucker's not in this movie?
Aaron Taylor Johnson. Yeah, it's not. I love the part when he's about to fight and says, "quote I've been craving for this."
I'm pretty sure they did do some kind of Craven pun in the promos as well.
Society is alive and well, folks.
Do you think he was there opening night, Justin Tucker, to see Craven the Hunter?
I would hope that he would be. He would have been invited to like the red carpet premiere.
I think,
right?
Yeah, I would think. I mean, I would hope everybody in that commercial.
Wouldn't that have lined up with the Ravens week? We probably could have flown out to LA for that.
Probably, yeah. The question is, what do the Ravens have to do to get a movie scene filmed here? Because the new Superman trailer came out, and
Trash.
I think wow. Yeah. Hot take. I'm holding my hopes high for James Gunn and his new DC universe. I know they're going to bungle it like they always do. But I think the Cleveland Guardians Stadium is in a shot of that. We've seen other. Is it Shazam uses stadiums. Can we see a stadium in M&T Bank Stadium here in a movie?
Have we not?
A superhero movie?
I guess we haven't. I mean, Camden Yards has appeared in movies or
Camden
shows,
Yards
right?
is in everything.
I know it was in Seinfeld, right?
It's in Veep.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in Seinfeld. I think that's Yankee Stadium.
Oh, it was just the Orioles game.
Yeah. It is also it's supposed to be Cleveland, but it's in Major League 2.
One last thing that we should probably talk about is the fact that the Ravens
Craven the Hunter.
Are we
getting a sequel?
We are not getting a sequel to Deontay Johnson, Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah. He was waived by the team a few days ago. Friday?
Yesterday.
Friday. So nice Friday news dump after they were kind of holding on to him, holding out hope that something would happen. Either he would change his mind or I don't know what they could have possibly been hoping for, because they came to the agreement that he was not going to practice and he was not in the building to our knowledge. And ultimately they decided to waive him. And then we see a report from Adam Schefter an hour before they kick off, Ravens kick off today, that he's probably not going to make it through waivers. He's probably going to end up on a playoff-bound team like Jim Harbaugh's Chargers.
That would be incredible.
Or Andy Reid's Chiefs.
I think the Chargers probably need a receiver more than the Chiefs at this point with Hollywood Brown back. But also Jim Harbaugh is the brother of John Harbaugh. And he should know better than anyone just how much of a headache this has been.
Right.
Jim Harbaugh is the ultimate, how can you reconcile who's got it better than us? Nobody. And also, I'm not going to go into this game because I'm set with my playing time.
Right. But also, you can see how that both coaches would have the same affinity for him. Like, if John Harbaugh fell for it, maybe Jim Harbaugh also
Yeah, and
fell for it.
I mean, I guess we're probably
Also, like, think of it as
the coaches aren't the ones making the
yeah.
decisions ultimately. I mean, like Eric Costa had his hands on the trade for Deontay Johnson. So in LA, it's going to be Joe Ortiz, and I mean that's you know not as close a relationship as John and Jim Harbaugh, but he was his lieutenant for so many years in Baltimore. And if the Deontay Johnson nightmare experience that we got was not enough to sway the Chargers, then I guess you take your shot.
But also think about it from maybe the sibling rivalry perspective of, well, John couldn't get it to work, but maybe I can.
Yeah, a lot of good memes were had.
And also, if he ends up on the Chiefs and he somehow catches a touchdown in a playoff game against the Ravens, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, I'm gonna go to the water and stare out at the ducks and think
We don't
about
need
life.
we don't need to analyze. We don't need to spend a lot of time analyzing
On a
depth charts. But
hypothetical move.
if he's going to the Chiefs, he's going to be behind Hollywood Brown now, DeAndre Hopkins now, probably Xavier Worthy. So he's not going to be in any more accommodatable spot.
Well, that's
With the
thing.
Chargers, at least you have only Lad McConkey, basically, maybe Joshua Palmer, blocking your path to snap. So obviously the Chiefs would be way behind the Chargers on that waiver claim order. So I think it would be everyone else in the NFL basically would have to pass on Deontay Johnson for Kansas City to claim him.
If you're non-playoff at this point, if you're a non-playoff team, why would you claim him?
Yeah,
I mean, there's for 2 games.
Some probably misbegotten faith that once he hits free agency, he might get you a comp pick. But again, I think we probably talked ourselves out of that.
What kind of situation could possibly make him happy at this point? Like, no playoff team is going to have such a dearth of wide receivers that he's going to be able to get enough targets to satisfy him.
Yeah, like maybe the Broncos.
There was a scenario where he gets targets in this Ravens offense in this game and also in the Eagles game. I mean, literally, Rashad Bateman goes out with an injury, and they had an opportunity to give him the ball much more. I mean, Devontae Walker was out there. He didn't catch any passes today, but I saw him running routes. Blew an opportunity. Yeah, huge opportunity. Who's going to win the Calais Campbell?
I was hoping you'd bring that up. So the reporting out of Miami is that basically as soon as this Dolphin season is cooked, I think they are one loss away from being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, that there is an understanding between Calais and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, and the Dolphins front office that he would be unfettered and released. And of course, no guarantee that he would end up back in Baltimore, but the Ravens are not so record-wise that they would be among the last teams to have their putting the claim for him and maybe get him. What's his face? The guy from Good Morning Football who's on the Bill Simmons podcast.
Peter
Schrager, yeah, went on the Bill Simmons podcast. This week he said his expectation. It didn't sound super sourced. Was that Calais would end up back in Baltimore?
Interesting.
So we'll see. I don't know how much currency like Drew Rosenhaus would have, how much sway he would have in basically telling teams that are not on Calais's wish list that he just won't play for them.
Right.
I don't know if that is a lever that you can realistically pull for every team that you don't want to play for. But I mean, it's interesting when you see all the teams that would be interested in having Calais Campbell on their team. Detroit Lions, they would be behind the Ravens. Kansas City Chiefs, they would be behind the Ravens. You could maybe see Denver being Calais's hometown, I believe, but they already had a really good defensive line. It seems like the Ravens, again, knock on wood, would be in good position to get him into Baltimore for a playoff run, and that would be really fun. I mean, like he's
a fun story.
Not only is he an incredible dude, but I think he's PFF's number 5-ish or something interior defensive lineman at this point. So he only has 4 sacks or so, but he's going to kick ass in the run game. You can line him up on the edges, you can line him up inside. He's was a really trusted leader and mentor for guys like Nabi Madubuike, Broderick Washington. So I guess we'll probably know more in the next 48 hours whether there's a possibility that Calais will come to Baltimore, and if not then maybe the next week if the Dolphins do indeed lose. But yeah, I mean, nothing to kind of wipe the the bitter taste of the Deontay Johnson experience than bringing in Calais Campbell and basically having to pay nothing to get him because you go from what were the reports like a fourth round pick or fourth or fifth round pick the Ravens offered to get Calais back here, and instead of that, get him for like a couple $100,000 maybe. Pretty good business.
How about they do double dip with former Dolphins? Bring back OBJ.
But you're gonna say Tyler Huntley.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? All three? What a storyline. The Baltimore Dolphins. Wow. All right. That just about does it for our podcast today. Of course, please like, rate, review, subscribe. That would be very much appreciated. If you could write us a nice review. If you're feeling good about this Ravens win, give us a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here with your handle and all that good stuff on the Banner Ravens podcast.
If you have a meme that you would like to relate to the Deontay Johnson situation, we are in the market
throw
for
it
those.
our way. Or just a meme in general. Throw it our way. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at Paul Banner Sports. One more quick word.
Don't miss the 2025 CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament in Baltimore, February 25th to March 1st at CFG Bank Arena. Watch HBCU teams battle to be crowned champion. Check out the free fan fest and performances at the Baltimore Convention Center. Enjoy downtown's top restaurants and stay in one of our amazing hotels. The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament. You want to be here.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We will be back, I guess, Monday to try to prepare for the Wednesday Christmas game. Jonas, you're heading out to Houston for the second straight year. You're going to be on the road for Christmas. I'm so sorry.
It's times like these I wish I was Jewish, Paul.
And with that, thanks so much for tuning in.